Welcome to another Fanboy Film Nerd Galaxy Class spoiler review of Spider-Man Far From Home, what they are calling the epilogue of the Marvel Cinematic Universe up until Endgame. This is kind of the end cap, and I thought it was a perfect end cap. If you think about what an end cap is and an epilogue is, it's kind of just a little small story that kind of wraps up the overall story, which was the huge cinematic universe coming from Iron Man all the way up until Endgame. You get Spider-Man Far From Home, and you have something that is coming in the same year as Captain Marvel and Endgame. I thought this was the perfect film to kind of wrap up that 22 movie 10-year saga that they had going on, that so many people went to movie theaters and bought movie tickets, billions and billions of dollars for Endgame. And you think, okay, well, it's all wrapped up. Where are they going to go with this? And you get into Spider-Man Far From Home, and you realize instantly in this movie that, yeah, we're talking about Endgame, but Spider-Man Far From Home felt more like, to me, story-wise, as we go down the list here. Story-wise, just to hop right into it, I felt like, yes, it was in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but if you was to take out the Marvel Cinematic Universe and just had this be a direct sequel to Homecoming, you technically could have had both Homecoming and Far From Home not be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe at all. Especially if you remove Tony Stark from it. He doesn't really interact with a lot of Avengers. You see some of the cameos from Captain America, this person, that person, in Homecoming and Far From Home. But since Spider-Man is a Sony character, you really do get the sense that he is probably the most detached Avengers we've had from some of these other incarnations of other films that have come out, like Captain America, and Iron Man, all the other ones that had their films, Thor. You kind of get the sense that with Spider-Man, they're setting up their own little mini universe while still in the MCU, because we don't know where the MCU is going to completely go. We have some ideas. Now, you have this Disney streaming service that's going to have all these new Marvel shows with Vision and Scarlet Witch, Loki's show, Winter Soldier, Falcon. You're gonna have so many. The Hawkeye. You're gonna have the new what's her name, Black Widow, coming back, having her own feature film. You have a lot of other feature films coming out. Captain Marvel, obviously, Black Panther 2, all those. But Spider-Man is still the most recognizable of all of those characters I just named. He is the cash cow of all those characters. If you're not going to have any more Iron Man films, Captain America films, we're going to get Thor and Guardians of the Galaxy. Those are cosmic films. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but a lot more people identify with Spider-Man than they do with Guardians of the Galaxy and some of the cosmic films like Captain Marvel and Thor. So with this film, I felt like they did a really good job of making you feel like it's still attached to the MCU, but also having him be his own character going forward, regardless of what they're going to do with the MCU. And I heard reports about Venom, who is, I think they're currently shooting Venom 2 as we speak. They are going to definitely cross those over. So in the future, Spider-Man is going to have a crossover film with Venom. And it just gets my brain going in this movie as we get more into the story here. When you bring in Mysterio, the Master of Illusion, and by the way, this is obviously a spoiler review, so if you have not seen the film, please go see the film. I actually like the film. Just right up front, I like the film. I love the film. It's one of my favorite Spider-Man films. I'm a huge Spider-Man nut job. He's my third favorite comic book character of all time behind Batman and Superman. So this guy here, I really loved him in this film. So if you are a Spider-Man fan, you haven't seen the film, please go watch the film. I go deep in these reviews, so that's your warning. Going forward here, Mysterio, the Master of Illusion. I didn't know a whole lot about Mysterio from the comics. He wasn't a character that I really identify with as far as saying, okay, this is a character that I really want to invest my time in. I love villains, and I love illusions and all that, but he seemed so much like Doctor Strange, and in the mix between other characters. He was so weird. He has that fishbowl head. He was so strange that I almost thought he was too strange. And haven't seen this, and I did read some Mysterio stuff. He's just not one of my favorite villains. This incarnation of him for live action, I actually enjoyed this guy. I was a little nervous about Mysterio going into it because I was thinking, how far are they going to go? And I'm not going to lie to you. When they were talking about the multiverse and everything, I started getting a little nervous because you can open up too many multiverses and all the storylines either don't make sense, don't hold weight anymore, or they're going to get so preposterous that anything's possible, where you're going to literally have some of the weirdest team-ups you could think of. But I get it. You need to have the mention of multiverses because it is common. There's talking about rumors. There are rumors that Spider-Man is going to have his own Spider-Verse with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. That I would be on board with. But if you start, especially if they cross those three over with Venom, the Venomverse over at Sony, I think that would be really cool. Especially if they don't kill off Carnage in Venom 2. I think you have a lot to work with. My only issue with all the multiverse stuff is that you start getting into this area of, okay, we're getting itchy. You have all these multiverses open. When does Fantastic Four come in? Marvel. When does the X-Men come in? Marvel. We need to know when these things are going to happen. People are going to start being, hey, look, the timeline doesn't have to be so long now. Why do we have to wait 5 years for an X-Men film when you already have these characters that are crossing over right now, and you can pretty much do whatever you want, just drag them over from another universe or dimension, and you're good. That part of it, I don't know. But as far as the story goes for Spider-Man Far From Home, I actually liked it. It was so contained, even though it said Far From Home, the skeptical of it was really contained, just like it would be in New York City Block. I love that aspect of it. It didn't go cosmic. I love that. It didn't get too hokey with the deaths of Stark and everything. They they kept it home. Far From Home. It's like, but they kept it there. It was a Spider-Man movie, and I liked it. I felt like it was more of a Spider-Man movie than Homecoming was. I thought Homecoming was kind of Iron Man Jr. He's even more Iron Man Jr. in this, but you can see he's fighting that quite a bit, and he really just wants to be Spider-Man. And I like that because I felt like in Homecoming, you almost had the sense that he wants to be too much like Tony Stark. Even though a lot of it wasn't his fault. He didn't make that suit. Tony made that suit for him. He didn't make the Iron Spider suit. Tony made him that. He didn't become Tony made him an Avenger. Tony gave him the glasses in this movie. There's so many things that Tony has done for him that it's almost like, hey, Tony, back off and let this kid be Spider-Man. Let him figure out Spider-Man first before you start crowning him the new Iron Man. Let's get into the cast here. You have Tom Holland as Spider-Man, Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, Zendaya as Michelle, MJ. You had Jacob, but this dude's name, if I butcher it, Batalon, he's Ned. Samuel Jackson obviously is Nick Fury. You have Marissa Tomei as May Parker, Aunt May. You have Comey Smulders as Maria Hill. Jon Favreau is Happy. And I really, really like this cast. I like the cast. I thought Tom Holland is growing on me more and more as Spider-Man, even though he's been in, I think, 4 or 5 films now. He was in Civil War, his debut. He was in Homecoming, Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War, obviously. And he's in Far From Home, so that's 5. So we've had more than enough films to judge this guy as a Spider-Man. He's actually had 2 more films than Tobey Maguire and 3 more films than Andrew Garfield. Although a couple of those, his screen time obviously is not about him, but we've seen his incarnation of Spider-Man, and I think every time he's been out as Spider-Man, it's been a very good Spider-Man. Again, I'm a huge Spider-Man nut job. I really do base my Spider-Man bar. I try to raise the bar as far as I can with Spider-Man because he is such an easy character to get right if you really put the effort into it, and you can see that in some of the films. If you look at him in Spider-Man 2, which is still my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time, is Spider-Man 2, Tobey Maguire's version. That movie is a clear example of if you want to get him right, you can get him right. If you look at Spider-Man 3, there's a clear example. If you want to get it wrong, get it wrong. If you go to Andrew Garfield, Amazing Spider-Man is actually not that bad of a film. I know people bag on it. It's really not that bad. It's a really good film. But if you look at Amazing Spider-Man 2, you can see what happens when you get a little bit too ambitious, and that's what you get. I thought in Homecoming, I like Homecoming, but I thought that suit took away every single thing that made Spider-Man Spider-Man, and he really was Iron Man Jr. in Homecoming. I felt that. I was like, where's the Spidey sense? Or what they call it in this one, his the tingle. Aunt May's the tingle there. I personally believe Spider-Man with the tech, I'm not really on board with that. I really prefer him to just be Spider-Man and use his webs, use his genius, use his wits to get through situations. Because you even see in this film, if he loses his webs, he really doesn't have much to do other than his strength. But he's not incredibly big. He's not that strong. Yes, he's strong for what he has, but when you're going up against something like those elementals, that's one thing. Or you're going against Thanos, that's a different story. In Spider-Man vs. Thanos, there's no contest. Thanos is going to crush him. It's just no way in living hell he could ever fight something like that. If you just think about this, of all the Avengers, Cap would have destroyed him easily. Iron Man would have destroyed Spider-Man easily. Thor, of course. Captain Marvel. The only people he really could take out is some of the lower level ones, like Falcon. I don't think Falcon would stand a chance against Spider-Man, obviously. I don't think Winter Soldier could stand a chance against a Hawkeye, any of those levels. But you get some of the big ones, he's not that powerful. And that's why I love Spider-Man. Because he's powerful, but he's not overpowered. He has severe weaknesses that can be exploited very easily. One of being is just his identity. It's just his identity. Let's get into Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. I love Jake Gyllenhaal. He's one of my favorite actors. He's been one of my favorite actors for probably 15 years now. And I need to go back and check all my source material for Mysterio, because that guy in this film, I love what they did with him. With the illusion stuff, with the drones, those illusion sequences he had with Spider-Man were some of the best Spider-Man moments I have ever seen. It was almost like you had an open, beautiful canvas, and you can just do whatever you wanted on there. And I thought they did such a good job. My only problem with Mysterio is that they killed him off at the end. I was hoping he would live like Vulture did in Homecoming, because I just love that character. I loved Mysterio. Just as a character alone, I need to go back and start reading some of his stuff. I just fell in love with this character. I've seen the movie twice now, and I enjoyed Mysterio even more the second time around, when I knew he was up to the whole time. And Jake Gyllenhaal is so fucking good at playing characters like that. He can play the smooth guy who's just Quentin, and he's walking around, but as soon as you find out in that bar, when that projection goes away and Peter hands him the glasses from Tony and says, hey, look, you go do what you need with them, I'm out. He goes into a whole different character and is just absolutely perfect. He is so batshit crazy. Speaking of characters, I like in this film how they tied in the other films. That Quentin Beck was the same person who created that illusion based theme that Tony was using in Civil War to kind of access his memories. I love that he went all the way back to Warmonger in the original Iron Man. And you had a guy working on the suit from the original Iron Man. I just love that. That's why the MCU is so good, because you can tap into something that happened 5 years ago, or you can tap into something that happened 11 years ago. That's insane. It's just fucking insane, because you know damn well they had no idea back in the original Iron Man that they were going to have a character that could possibly be in not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but the 5th appearance of a Spider-Man in their universe, after the culmination of every fucking hero you can think of in 2 giant films in Infinity War and Endgame. And you're still picking out little things in there to connect his universe. It is a masterclass of how to build a cinematic universe. I don't know if anybody's ever going to be able to top this. And they're not even done. Marvel's going into phase 4 with these characters. I just thought everything on point with these characters was great. Zendaya as MJ, she melted my heart in this movie. I thought she was so fucking cute in this movie. It was ridiculous. That is insane. If you want to talk about charm and getting people to like you, no offense to Kirsten Dunst, but I went back with my son and watched Spider-Man 2. Again, my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time. Kirsten Dunst as MJ, I have to admit, she is not very good. And I actually thought she was back when I was younger watching those films. I was 22 years old when the original Spider-Man came out. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. I thought, oh my god, she's gorgeous. Yeah, look at her. She's upside down kiss. And then you realize, by the time you get to Spider-Man 3, you're like, fuck, was she really that good? I thought she was good in Spider-Man 1. But she, compared to Zendaya's MJ, not that they're the same character, because they're not, so it's not fair to really compare the two. And it's not fair because literally in Spider-Man 1, Tobey Maguire's version, they graduate high school before the, like literally when the second act starts. They're in college. These are kids in Far From Home and Homecoming. But I love that. That's what Spider-Man's all about. They're not rushing that along. They could have rushed that along even coming out of Endgame. But no, it's like they're still in high school. They still have to go through this. And I thought that was perfect because that's what you need. 2 movies with them still being just kids. They can't even fucking drive cars yet. I love that. That's what you needed. And I thought MJ was great in this film. Ned and Betty. My fucking god, that was hilarious to me. I know that probably pissed a lot of people off. Wasn't expecting that, but I thought that was really good. I love the teachers. They were fucking hilarious. Nick Fury, hilarious in this film. I thought they might have made him a little bit too weak. And that's the only word that pops into mind. Because he does say, it's like, the teenagers goes to me, Happy's goes to me. He's got Maria with him, but he doesn't have S.H.I.E.L.D. backing him anymore. He's kind of his own guy, and Quentin even says he's the most powerful man in the world. Is he? Because he can't even get a call back from Spider-Man, but he's the most powerful man in the world. I don't know if I buy that. He just seemed a little hollow to me in this film. The most hollow he's ever been in any of these films. He seemed shoehorned in to this film. Nick Fury did not need to be in this film at all. I hate to say that, but he really didn't. He really didn't. Everything that happened to Spider-Man could have happened without them. You could have just had Quentin doing everything Nick was doing to get Spider-Man to be certain places. I love the Spider-Man talks that he gave to Spider-Man, but Happy could have easily given him the same talks. In fact, the best talks in the movie, if you want to talk about referencing the other films, came from Happy towards Spider-Man. Nick Fury did not need to be in this film, but I love the fact that he is. Even though I felt like in every scene he didn't need to be in the scene, I like the fact that I actually love the fact that he's in this film, because I think it again brings him back to where we are in Endgame, where everything's kind of been reset, and you need some characters to be in this film that represented that phase, each one of those phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, up until this point. You needed somebody there, and who's better than Nick Fury? He's not a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. anymore, so it's like, what the hell is he doing? Is he just kind of monitoring around? He's monitoring the world? But he doesn't have. He even admits, I don't have the resources, and it's like I come back, I don't know anything. I just feel like something wasn't right there. He believed back, he was like on the side of Mysterio. He even tried to say that he wasn't, but he was. He got fooled by that. So that was just a little strange for me, because that was like kind of like a punch drunk Nick Fury in the movie, just a bit. I'm nitpicking. No pun intended. Let's get into the directing. And obviously with a film like this, any director who's involved is going to have a little bit of a challenge of what they can and can't do, because they have so many things that has to be put in before that came before, that you have to stay in that universe, stay in those rules. And you're dealing with a cast that's worked with many different directors, many different actors and actresses. It can be a bit of a challenge. And I don't envy any of these guys who have to take on the challenge of trying to direct an MCU film, especially when there's been this many films in, because there's been so many good films with every single character you can think of. And if you're going to come into this film and be like, hey, I want to do my own thing, it's very hard to do that. The director, Tom Watts, I take my hat off to him, because he made something original while being in the cinematic universe and coming off, again, 4 appearances of Spider-Man. What do you do with this guy? Not only 4 appearances by Spider-Man in this universe, but we've had 5 other Spider-Man films And in recent time, Spider-Man's being rebooted a lot, and we just came off a very, very good animated film in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So you're dealing with a character who has been milked dry in the last 15 to almost 20 years now. So what are you going to do with Spider-Man? Okay, let's put him in another continent. That's good. Let's bring in a villain that I think a lot of people have been wanting to see, but very skeptical of how's it going to work. It worked. Let's bring in some things that are a little bit unconventional for a Spider-Man film. Talking about elementals and things like that. I thought all of it, all in all, came together exceptionally well, better than I thought. This movie was definitely better than I thought it would be, based off just what you were dealing with. You got, and again, having to come off Endgame and a previous Spider-Man movie that just came out just barely 7 months ago, in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. You had Venom last year. You had a lot of Spider-Man element things that have been coming out. Even the Spider-Man game. There's so many things that have shaped this movie to have a lot of pressure on it. A lot of pressure. And I thought it lived up to that. I think a lot of people might walk out of the movie being like, maybe there could have been a little bit more of this or that. It's hard for me to nitpick it because I absolutely love the film. But there are spots in the movie where I can see where people would perhaps think that maybe they could have done a better job in certain areas. Maybe with characters, maybe with Spider-Man himself. Actually, again, I still think his spider sense needs to be utilized more. I still think there are some Spider-Man stuff in there that they're missing, that he's still a little baby Tony Stark, but I still thought it was improvement over Homecoming. Another thing that I thought that was good in this movie was the use of the different suits, especially if you just got done playing Spider-Man PS4, where you got to see all the different suits, and you got to see his black suit, and his stealth suit is what they call it, and his Far From Home black and white suit with the white spider. I love that. I one of the things I loved about Spider-Man PS4 was the white accents added to the suit, because we're so used to seeing black on him in all these other films, black, blue, and red, obviously. But just to have that white spider on there, it's just something about it I like. I don't know. It's not stealth. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's very cosmetic, but it looks very, very good. I just think that white on that suit looks very good. And this Far From Home suit, I have always been in love with the Spider-Man 2 Tobey Maguire suit. That's been my favorite Spider-Man suit for forever. And I still think it is. But a close second is this Far From Home suit that he wore at the end of the film. I really like that suit. Really liked it. I didn't particularly care too much for the Homecoming suit. I thought it was okay, but again, I thought it looked a little Iron Man-ish. It just looked too techie. I thought this suit looked better in Far From Home, the one that he made for himself. I thought that one was dope. I loved it, and I thought the director overall, well, what you have to work with, and we don't know what's going forward. The director obviously has to know something that's going forward. So you have walls up. And what he did in those walls, I thought was pretty good. I mean, this cannot be easy to keep making films like this. Marvel is just knocking it out of the park with every movie they come out with. And I think this movie is no exception. I think Far From Home is very, very good. It's not on par with obviously some of the bigger films like Civil War and Endgame and Infinity War and Winter Soldier and Iron Man. It's not up there, but Guardians of the Galaxy is one of those. But it's in that second tier right there with the original Captain America, and it's in there with Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3, Thor. Those films where it's just a tier under, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It's not bad at all. And I still think it's better than Homecoming, which I had in that tier to begin with. It's a little bit step up from that, but it hasn't reached that Civil War status. And that's not fair, because Civil War really, both Winter Soldier and Civil War are that they're extensions of the Avengers. I mean, you have all kinds of characters in there. And Spider-Man, these movies have been very, small and just pulled in and what Spider-Man needs to be. So I have no problem with that at all. We're going to run through the rest of this list pretty quickly because it's a Marvel film. I don't have to go so deep. A lot of times I'll I'll go deeper in these when they're indie films or something that isn't tied into a cinematic universe. But when you're in a cinematic universe, a lot of times the same stuff applies to every film, especially Marvel these days. So we're just going to run through the rest of this list and get you out of here. The writing in this film, we've already touched on a little bit. I love the writing. I like the jokes. I thought they were all perfectly timed. I thought maybe the plot was a little bit thin. Maybe they could have thickened it in some areas and maybe refrain from the jokes a little bit. But it's a Spider-Man film. They're on vacation. It's a summer movie. You're coming off the heaviest films you had in Marvel, with Captain Marvel and Infinity War and Endgame. Not that Captain Marvel was like super heavy, but it's heavier than Spider-Man Far From Home. You're done with all the heavy stuff. Let's get back to being a little more light and family oriented, where you don't have to worry about Thanos cutting someone's head off. That kind of stuff. I thought that was great. They just brought it back home. Again, that word home. I think the word home with Spider-Man is perfect, and I had no problem with the writing at all in this movie, other than maybe they could have cut back on some of the jokes, but that isn't always writing. A lot of it's on-set improv stuff that got thrown in as they're doing it. The production value of this film I thought was great. There were sometimes I felt they felt a little claustrophobic. You felt like they were in the same area, even though they were moving to different areas like Prague or whatever. You kind of felt like set-wise they were on a stage or they were in the same area. It just didn't feel as open and as wide as I thought it was going to feel. But again, this is Spider-Man. Everything's supposed to be pulled in, reserved, feel like you're at home with him, and it's an intimate production. It's not supposed to be super huge. No matter where Spider-Man's at, he is a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Neighborhoods are small. So I like that aspect. I don't have a problem with that at all. In fact, sometimes I think even in my brain, and I know this happens to a lot of people, you think things should be bigger, and then you get in the theater, it's like, no, it's much better contained. And I thought the production of it was great with that. The cinematography, again, Marvel is Marvel. There's really nothing to talk about. They're top notch. They know the cinematography. It's supposed to look like a comic book movie. It does, and no issues with that at all. The music and the sound. The music in the film I love. I love the score. I'm thinking about buying it. Mysterio's theme I loved. Again, that bar scene with Mysterio when he starts spilling out his plan, that he achieved perfectly. How often do you get a villain who spills out a plan after he achieved it 100%, and then he tells you? Most of the time we hear about the plan, especially in Bond films, you hear about the plan before the plan even starts, and you can, okay, well, he missed that. That's 10 points off, basically, if you were scoring it, right? No, you don't know his plan. And then he stands up and is like, hey, we did it perfectly, guys, for years, 100% up until this point. I thought that was cool, and the music playing underneath that I thought was perfect. That summer feel, lighthearted, very good movie when it comes to the lightheartedness of it. That is not heavy. It's very light. I like that a lot. The score was great. I really love the score. And there was some, again, the sequences, the illusion sequences that Mysterio put on Spider-Man when he was inside of the illusion. I thought that was just amazing. The music, just top-notch. No problem with the music, and the sound design was awesome as well. I actually thought the sound design is sometimes could have been a little better, and people say, you were really nitpicking. I am. It's a great film, but there were some things were in there that I was hearing. Sound-wise, I thought maybe could have been a little bit better. Some of it sounded very generic and just thrown in last minute, sound effect-wise. But I mean, Spider-Man. I mean, come on, give the guy a break. So, how good is it? I think it's very good. If I don't do scales of 1 to 10 or is it A plus, whatever, I always say it's just very, 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 very good. It's worth your money to go see the movie. If you have a big family and you want to say, hey, look, let's go out and spend the night at this movie. This is one of the movies where you can take a baby into it, or you can bring somebody 100 years old and they're going to have fun in this movie. It's just a fun movie. It's fun to look at. It's fun to hear. It's fun to interact with other people. I actually sat, the first time I went with my son, the second time I went with an audience, the place was sold out. I had a guy sitting next to me. He was looking at his phone the whole time. I liked the movie so much, I didn't give a shit about this guy having 3 phones and 2 of them were burner accounts because he's probably trying to get with some, who knows, right? But normally that would piss me off, but I was having so much fun with the film, I said, fuck this guy, I'm just going to watch the movie. If that was some other film, any film, I probably would have told that guy, man, if you don't turn them fucking phones off, I'm going to show them up your ass. But I was having so much fun with the film, I literally just like, fuck them. You know, I don't want to cause anything to make me stop watching this movie. And that was the second time I watched it. I'm going to go see it one more time. But, again, Spider-Man fan here. But even if you're not, I recommend it highly. How bad is it? It's not very bad. Only thing I would say is, again, it's an end cap to a 22 movie, roller coaster ride, and it's gonna feel very much like the other Marvel films. There aren't a lot of huge surprises in the film, except at the end when J. Jonah Jameson comes out, who is in the Tobey Maguire universe, by the way. Which you want to talk about? Are they gonna do the parallel universes there and open up the multiverse? If J. Jonah Jameson's from Tobey Maguire's universe shows up in Tom Holland's universe, then now we're talking about something different, but that's a whole nother video. It's not very bad at all. I just think you would really, if you showed up to this movie and said, I'm going to watch a Spider-Man movie, and you walked out disappointed, then that's pretty much on you, because they give you Spider-Man in this movie. Far more than they did in Homecoming, where you got Iron Man Jr. This is a Spider-Man movie. Some of the best Spider-Man visual effects I've seen, some of the best Spider-Man gadget, as far as gadgets go, like him spinning his webs, the way he uses his web shooters, the unique situations. It's all about situations with Spider-Man. You put him in unique situations, all of his gimmicks and everything he does works better, but it has to be situational, and I think they put in the right situations in this movie for him to work. Could they have been better? Of course, you could say that about any movie. Did I particularly like the elemental side of it? No, but they were illusions, so why get pissed about it, right? So no, it's not a bad film at all. I highly recommend it. Take your friends, take your family, take yourself to go see Spider-Man Far From Home. That'll do it for this Fanboy Film Nerd Galaxy Class spoiler review. I'll see you guys on the next one. Have fun at the movies.